Hello, this is Scott Bogren, Communications Director for the Community Transportation Association of America, and it is Thursday, January 16th, 2014, and I'm here to reinstitute the quick videos about where the transit field stands with the legislative process and more specifically with the reauthorization of surface transportation legislation, MAP 21 reauthorization. We're going to have a series of videos that I'll be producing throughout calendar year 2014 with the latest updates on the progress of the legislation, and this is the first of those. So thanks for joining, and I wanted to first and foremost cover two hearings that were held this week. The first two hearings on MAP 21 reauthorization. One of them, on Tuesday the 14th, was held in the House of Representatives in the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. And then earlier today, the Senate Banking Committee had a hearing on MAP 21 and specifically on public transportation. So let's take those in order. The first hearing in the House, chaired by Representative Schuster, chair of the T&I Committee, had a lot of analysis overall on transportation and funding. And Larry Hanley, who is the director of the Amalgamated Transit Union, was on hand to talk a lot about transit funding, and there was a lot of discussion. Some of the key issues, though, and really timelines, was one of the most important things that came out of that hearing in the House on Tuesday. Representative Schuster was very clear that he intended to work the MAP 21 reauthorization legislation through that committee in the spring with a goal towards having a full bill on the House floor before the August recess. And that's an important timeline to keep in mind, understanding that September 30, 2014 is when MAP 21 times out. So that is kind of the deadline that we're all working on right now. There was also in the House side some interesting discussion that started to, I think, shed light on some of the core issues that the House will be struggling with as it moves forward on its reauthorization legislation. One of the main issues, of course, is overall funding levels. If you're not aware, community and public transportation are funded largely through the mass transit account of the trust fund, which comes from gas tax revenues, and as well some general revenues. And increasingly, they have needed additional general revenues to add to a surface transportation trust fund that is losing its buying power because more people are driving more fuel-efficient vehicles, and just receipts into the trust fund are going down. So given the need and the demand to keep the overall surface transportation system whole, highways, bridges, transit, what we're dealing with here then is a basic funding issue. And this really, the House and the Senate are going to deal with this as the core issue, and that is, how do we get a sustainable revenue source into the trust fund that can take us into the next bill? The reason MAP 21 was a 2-year bill was because that was as much money as they could cobble together, keeping us whole. And some fissures or some different ways of thinking about that emerged in the House side with one of the members, Representative Hanna from New York State, asking questions about transit and transit riders not necessarily paying into or paying for their service, whereas highway users pump their gasoline and therefore are paying for the highway part of the trust fund. And that whole issue is one that's going to play out in the House side. It will also play out on the Senate side, with that issue being, how do we keep transit and transit's allocation in the trust fund? Now, on the Senate side in today's session, there was more of a specific focus on public transportation, and that meeting was chaired by the chair of the committee, Senator Tim Johnson from South Dakota. And there were really two emerging issues that came out of this hearing. One, a number of rural senators from largely rural states, from Nebraska, from Montana, from West Virginia, from Idaho, and from South Dakota, asked a lot of questions of one of the hearing participants, FTA Administrator Peter Rogoff. They asked Mr. Rogoff a lot about the safety regulations that FTA is working on, and clearly these members of the Senate had heard from their states that there was concern on the part of smaller city and rural transit operators on how they would be impacted by these forthcoming safety regulations. And January 2nd, the advance notice of proposed rulemaking closed. You can see, and I'll share a link with you later on where to see CTAA's response to the safety ANPRM. Interestingly, Mr. Rogoff at each turn agreed with these senators, saying FTA wants to develop rules for safety for these smaller agencies that don't create an undue financial or resource burden on these systems, these smaller systems, to meet the safety regulations, and that FTA's number one priority was rail systems, which is originally. There was also some questions asked about bus money and the needing of additional bus and bus facility capital money in the reauthorization of MAP 21, and some discussion of the loss of bus money in MAP 21. So that is also an issue that is going to be central to CTAA, certainly, and we were gratified to see Senator Manchin from West Virginia asking questions along those lines. So that's kind of an update on just these first two hearings, kind of first two shots out of the box. CTA is currently finalizing its final reauthorization plan. That plan has been informed by a number of listening sessions that were held around the country in the second and latter half of calendar year 2013, and all that is being brought together and compiled and will be developed into a series of one-pagers on topic areas, and that's kind of how we're going to roll out CTA's reauthorization plan. That should be ready within the next month, and I certainly will point that out to you. The data from those listening sessions is already available, and I should probably share with you now that if you go to CTA's website and click on MAP 21 Central, which is a drop-down menu from the top menu bar, you will see everything we've done about MAP 21. You'll see links to both of these two first hearings where you can watch the hearings for yourself. You can see the written comments. The CTA Small Urban Network, also known as the SUN, has already developed a one-pager that's available there on its kind of reauthorization concept. So we're seeing a lot of that, as we thought, moving along and moving quickly. Lastly, I would just urge you to follow my Twitter feed, which is at CTMag, CTMAG numeral 1, all together, CTMag1, for the latest updates on all sorts of news and federal coverage, legislative coverage of community and public transportation, and check in regularly on our webpage, the MAP 21 Central webpage, for updates as well. Thanks for joining me, and I'll be back at you soon with the latest information on MAP 21 reauthorization.